Welcome to Next Level Conversations. I am Shawnte, your host, and I am so excited you guys are joining us on tonight. For those of you who are just joining us, we created Next Level so that we could equip women with tools that they could implement in their life. What we're going to be doing is sharing stories of real life women who have gone through challenging situations, and they're going to be sharing how they managed those challenging situations. And our focus with Next Level is to help you find balance in your chaos. And again, I thank you guys for joining us on tonight. We are going to have a really good time over the next couple of weeks. For those of you who are just joining us, we have been talking about the four pillars of Next Level, or the four pillars of transformation. And the pillars that we've been talking about over the last few weeks have been awareness, intentionality, consistency, and mindfulness. And what we're going to do over the next few weeks is we are going to deep dive more into those pillars. And in particular, the pillar that we're going to be talking about on tonight is a little bit deeper into awareness. What we're going to be doing, and I just want to give you kind of an overview, we're going to be talking about identity and reclaiming your identity, finding the joy of self, helping you get back to your whole you. As women, what we do, and you guys can probably agree with me, we take on emotions. We carry things. We are women, so we were created to carry. And we carry burdens, we carry words, we carry situations, we carry feelings, we carry all sorts of things. And unlike when we have children, we release things after we carry them for a while. But as women, we take on and we don't always release the things that we carry, the things that we receive, the words that we receive from people, the emotions that we receive from people, and the roles that we actually end up taking in our life. And so what happens is we lose ourselves because we begin to adjust ourselves and become whatever it is that we need to be for the people in our life. And as a result, we look up one day and we don't know who we are. We've been adjusted so much because so many things have happened, and we've been hoarding those emotions and hoarding those feelings and hoarding those roles and becoming. We have the role of a mother, we have the role of a daughter, we have the role of a sister. We're just becoming what I call a chameleon. Whatever anybody needs us to be at that time, that's what we are. Sometimes we become doctors, sometimes we become lawyers, just whatever is needed, we take on that role. And so, what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks is we're going to be reclaiming our identity. We are going to be talking with women who have lost their identity, and we're going to be talking about their journey, how they lost it and how they reclaimed it, some of the tools that they used, some of the things that they did to recapture their identity. And we're going to end the series with an amazing expert who helps women using hair and her role as a beautician to help women reclaim the whole self. So I hope you guys just make plans to tune in because the next few weeks are going to be awesome. But like always, we're going to start with me because I never want to have you do something that I myself do not do first. And I'm going to tell you guys another story because y'all know I love stories. And that's what we do. We use real life stories to teach you. This past weekend, I had the opportunity to attend an event. And while I was at that event, this guy walked up on me and he said it so casually. He said, "What's your tragedy?" And I kind of looked at him and I was like, "I'm sorry." He said, "What's your tragedy?" And then he began to name them. He was like, "Are you divorced, widowed? Were you abused as a child? Did somebody leave you? What is your tragedy?" And the answer immediately came to mind, but it wasn't what I actually thought that it would be, or the way that I had always looked at my tragedy. Because I thought for the longest of time that getting a divorce was my great tragedy. I did. I thought that the breakup of my marriage was the thing, was my rock bottom. I thought that that relationship of 20 years, our life together, was the great tragedy of my life. And that was going to be the comeback. I thought that him walking out and deciding that he didn't love me anymore and me getting over that was the thing. But I was completely wrong. And it wasn't until I was sitting in a store, a furniture store to be exact, and I was there trying to figure out what couch I wanted. And as I was sitting there looking, and the salesman asked me, he said, "What color do you like?" And I just kind of paused. I really kind of froze because it hit me in that moment. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I liked. I had never picked out a couch for me because everything was wrapped up in a we or was connected to somebody else. And as I sat there, and even as I was talking with the guy that I was talking with this past weekend, I realized and I said immediately, my great tragedy was that I lost my identity. I lost who I was. I lost my voice. And it happened so long ago, so long before I even met my husband, well before I started in the workforce. I lost it a long time ago. In fact, I lost it when I was a little girl. And what was interesting, even in that moment, that was one of those aha moments because it was then that I realized the purpose that God had me going through what I was going through. It wasn't to prove how strong I was, it wasn't to become this great writer or even this show host. It was so that I could reclaim my identity and reclaim my voice. Because for the first time in my life, since I was about a teenager, there was nobody to take care of. There was nobody else to focus on. There was nobody else to look out for and to be concerned with. Because what happens is we begin to we take on all of these roles and we're so focused on all the people in our life that we don't have time to focus on ourselves. We don't have time to look at ourselves. We don't have time to pay attention to ourselves. And so it's easy to neglect us. And it's easy to lose our voice as women because we're so busy focusing and tending to everybody else and being what everybody else is in need of. And so, what I looked up and realized, and it happened during the time that I was in this transformation, during this time that my husband had decided that he wanted a divorce. What I realized is I didn't know me. I didn't know what I sounded like. I didn't know what I looked like. I didn't know how I felt about me. I didn't know anything about myself. And so what God made me realize, what God began to do is he was like, it's time for you to find you. And that was the start. That was the real deep work start and reflection for me to start reclaiming my identity. And as a result, my prayers changed. They did. My prayers changed because at this time, my prayers went from God, help me to know, help me to see this, help me to understand this, to God, help me to see me like you see me. And before you start praying that prayer, I'm gonna tell you, you better be careful what you ask for because God don't play, right? God does not play because when I said that, he began to really start showing me. And we began to, one of the things that God made me realize, he said, Shawnte, how you see you is a reflection of how you see me. That hurt my heart. And I'm going to tell you why. Because at this time in my life, I believed the lie. I believed the lies that were told to me. I believed what society had said. I believed what my abuser had said. I believed what my circumstances had conveyed to me. I believed every lie. I believed that I was dirty. I believed that I was filthy. When I would look at myself in the mirror, I would see the ugliest version of myself. I would see shame. And people would try to tell me that I was strong and I was great, but all I saw was weakness. I saw a weak girl who didn't fight an abuser. I saw a little girl who did not open up her mouth and tell when things were happening to her. She quieted her voice. And so when I looked in the mirror as an adult, I saw failure. I saw myself as a grasshopper. For those of you Bible scholars, you will recall when the children of Israel went to scope out the land, they saw the giants and stuff, and they said they were huge and we're grasshoppers. And the Bible says because they saw themselves as grasshoppers, everybody else saw them as grasshoppers. I saw myself as a grasshopper. I saw myself as incapable. I saw myself as weak and not important. And so what God started making me realize is, Shawnte, how you see you is how you see me. You see me as weak. And I want to say that that was a lie, but the more work that I did, I began to realize, God, you may actually be right, because I didn't trust him the way that I needed to trust him. And understand why he said that to me and why this was so important. I'm a reflection of God. You are a reflection of God. We are who God created. So when we down ourselves, the way we see ourselves is a clear reflection of how we see God. Because when we're looking at ourselves, we're looking at God. We're looking at his creation. We are his creation. And so the way that I saw me was not the way that God saw me. But I had to begin to ask myself, Shawnte, how do you see yourself? And so I want to ask you that question tonight. How do you see yourself? As I started this journey, that was one of the, y'all know I love lists. That was one of the first lists that I began to make, because there was 3 lists. And on that list was 3 questions. And the first question was, how do you see yourself? And that's the question that I'm asking you tonight. How do you see yourself? When you look at yourself in the mirror, how do you see yourself? The other thing was, how do you speak to yourself? What do you say to yourself? Because at this time, I didn't even realize it, but I talked so bad to me. I talked so negative to me. My self-talk was not uplifting. I would tell myself that I'm weak. I would literally tell myself that I would be like, girl, you stupid. And I said it so much, even in joking, that I began to reflect it. And I know I'm not stupid. I could do all sorts of amazing things, but that's the way that I talk to myself. People have been telling me for years, you got plenty of book sense, but no common sense. And then I started repeating those words. I believed that about myself. I would tell myself that I can't do it. I would tell myself, oh, that's not for me. That I can't do that. That's too hard. That's too big. And so I stopped myself from doing a lot of things. In return, that means that's how I saw God. I saw God as not being capable of doing great things. That means I saw God as being stupid or being not smart. Well, he's the all-powerful, all-knowing God. But the way that I saw myself, the way that I spoke to myself, were the words that I used to describe this omnipresent God, this magnificent God. And so your next question is, how? How do you speak to yourself? How do you speak to yourself? And the last thing I asked myself, y'all, I have my notes around here. I don't even know where they went, because my notes are really good. The last thing it was, how do you see yourself? How do you speak to yourself? And how do you treat yourself? That was the last question. And I began to make a list, because what I did was I preferred everyone over myself. I did. I preferred everybody over me. I treated everybody like they were very important, but I did not treat myself that way. I did not I did not self prioritize. I did not look out for myself. I didn't take care of my body. I didn't take care of my mind. I didn't take care of my emotions. I did not look handle myself well, which means that I was not handling God well. I put everybody before me, which means that I put everybody before God, not even realizing that I was doing it. And again, why is this so important? Because how I handle myself is how I handle God. I had an identity issue. I didn't know me. I didn't know the greatness about me. And I apparently didn't believe it about God, even though I kept saying it over and over and over again. But I thank God. I do. I thank God because God, as He took me along this journey, and we became, as we've been talking about, aware. These three questions were the questions that helped me get to a place of awareness. Where am I? Where am I? So I want you to think about this. How do you see yourself? How do you treat yourself? And how do you speak to yourself? So, in order to take me from where I was to where I am today, a, a confident woman who knows who I am, we had to go on a journey of releasing and rebuilding. And that's what we begin to do. We begin to release some things and we begin to rebuild some things. I had to become. And one of the, so I want to share 7 tips to help you reclaim your identity, identify who you are, and begin to live in that. And 7 tips to help you release and become. The first one, the first one is the first one of the first things that I did, and I had to realize that I did, was I had to let go of the childhood jokes. And I know that sounds crazy, but kids are funny. And I grew up, we have a big family. It was 7 of us. And in addition to the 7 of us that were there, we had a lot of family. We had a lot of people always in our house. And then you have kids at school. We were always cracking jokes about each other, always. And one of the things, and my sisters and brothers didn't even realize it, but my sisters and brothers would joke about me. They would call me Lip Lip. I fell one time when I was young and I busted my lips. And it seemed like as a result of that, my lips getting busted, like my lips just became so big for the rest of my face. And so what they would call me is they would call me Lip Lip. And so I was very self-conscious about my lips. I was. And I also had a really big butt. And everybody all my life would talk about how big my butt was. And some people in a nice way, some people in a negative way. But I was very self-conscious about that. And people would always tell me that I have a huge head. And so I was very self-conscious about that. As you guys can see, I have a gap. And I have been very self-conscious about that because what we do and what kids do and what we do even as adults, we joke. But the problem is that stuff sticks to us. And again, I say as women, we hold things, we hold emotions, we hold words. We like to just brush them off, but that stuff sticks to us and it sticks in the subconscious of our minds. And so I had to go on a journey of releasing the jokes, releasing the words, all those years that were stuck to me, that made me not see myself the way that God saw me. So how did we do that? God took me on a fast. It was 30 days. It was 30 days each of figuring out a part of my body because I made a list. I love lists, y'all. Do not ever discount the power of a list. Don't ever discount it. I made a list of all the parts of that I didn't like or that I was not comfortable with, that prevented me from sitting in comfort. And for 30 days, I would focus on that part of my body. Why did God create me like that? And accept that. Accept me. And I would tell myself, you know what? you have a big head because you have a big brain. There is a lot of knowledge and information in there. God created you like this because you are wise and you're going to hold knowledge, all sorts of things. And so every for 30 days, I would love on myself. And I had to release all of those jokes and realize why I am so wonderful. The next thing that we did was forgive myself. So, like I told you, I had a lot of different things going on as a kid. And I saw myself in such a small and weak way because of things that my abuser said and things that it seemed like life affirmed. And it affirmed it because that's how I was looking at it. And so, what I had to do was 30 days for actually, I started this journal. It started with a 30-day fast. I don't know why I love 30, but I do. I started this journal of an I'm sorry journal. I had to forgive myself for thinking bad and negative against myself, thinking other than against me. And so I began to tell myself, I'm sorry, because I didn't know. I didn't know that me with them was causing this to happen to me or was affecting who I was. I had to constantly, forgive myself for the way that I handled, and that was very, very, very huge. So before I could even, I had to tell myself, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Shawnte. I didn't know. And I didn't like to look in the mirror at this time. I stopped looking in the mirror and actually seeing myself when I was in high school. I would literally get into the mirror and I would do my hair, but I would keep my eyes closed so that I could not actually see me. And it wasn't the external me that I didn't want to see. It was the internal me. It was the things on the inside because I thought that the way that I saw myself was so negative. And so I had to start forgiving myself. And I had to forgive myself for what I knew, forgive myself for what I didn't know, forgive myself for what I did, forgive myself for what I didn't do, forgive myself for people that I allowed to come into my life, forgive myself for people that I listened to, and I had to forgive it and I had to release it. And so that's what we did. We created an I'm sorry journal. And it was letters and it was words to myself, my current self, talking to my past self, talking to my little girl self, but it was so therapeutic. The next thing that another thing that I went on a journey to see, and what another tool for figuring out who you are and reclaiming your identity is I had to begin to know who I am. And so the question is, how did I do that? As I told you, my identity, the way that I saw myself was so, for lack of a better word, jacked up. And so I attributed different things and different identities to me. I saw myself as weak, or I saw myself as not enough, and I said all kinds of bad things to myself. And what God began to do, and I touched on this a few weeks ago, what God began to do was he began to strip me of the Shawnte that I created. In Shantae's viewpoint, Shawnte was weak. Shawnte had not accomplished anything. Shawnte was second nature. Shawnte was forgotten. Shawnte wasn't seen by anybody, including herself. Shawnte couldn't lift anything. Shawnte couldn't write. I mean, if there was anybody who was self-mutilating, that's what I realized that I was doing now. I was cutting myself. I was mutilating myself. It was me. And so what God began to do is he told me, I want you, and I'm who you are. And so what I began to do is I began to create a list, and I called it the me that God created. And on this list, what would happen is God would send a word. He would send somebody to say something to me. He would send as I was telling y'all during this time period, I was intentional about looking for my manna, looking for the manna from God every day. And in that manna, sometimes he would tell me, you are beloved. I have called you by name. You are awesome. You are one made. You are strong. You are an overcomer. Different people tell me things, and I had got to the point where I stopped rejecting the good things about myself. Because in the past, I always accepted the negative things that people said. And don't ask me why. It was just, it's a trauma response. I accept every negative thing that people said, but I rejected every good thing. And that's because I didn't believe it about myself. But there was this point in this journey and in this time, I am beloved. I am strong. I can do this. I am wonderfully and fearfully made. I am courageous. I am not weak. I am bold. And so God just began to tell me all of these beautiful things about myself. And he still does it. He reveals different parts of me that I don't even know. Every day seems like I'm always being reminded or I'm figuring out, wow, that's me. That's me. And so I created this list, the me that God created. And I did. I looked for it and I was hungry for it. I was hungry for the beauty of who God said that I was. I was desperate for the me that God said that I was. And I mean, I was looking for it every single day. So that's three things that we've already about. We talked about releasing the jokes of the past and 30 days of self-love. That's one thing that you can do to help you reclaim your identity. The I'm sorry journal. Begin to forgive yourself. That helps you reclaim your identity. And then the figure out who you are and create a list, the me that God created. The next thing that I had to do, or another thing that I began to do in reclaiming my identity, was I had to start seeing myself because I couldn't see myself. I had to begin to see myself. As I told y'all, I like to cut. I like to cut myself. And I have a friend named Latasha who I would get on her nerves all the time because we would take pictures and I would get the picture and I would just begin to just pick myself apart, just cut myself up. And he would always say, "You look fine. Stop doing that." But I couldn't help it because I was so about nitpicking. And so what we began to do, and this was at the time where where people had started selfies, and I did not believe in selfies. What God did was he began to challenge me, take a picture every single day. I want you to take a picture and I want you to intentionally look at the picture and I want you to tell me some good things about you. I couldn't look at the pictures and identify anything negative. I had to find all good in the pictures. And at first, that was really hard to do. So I was so critical of myself and I was changing at the same time. But the more I continued to do it, so I don't use selfies like everybody use selfies. I use selfies to show myself who I am, see me, see me. And because I couldn't see myself. And so the more I begin to do it, I begin to, wow, that's me. That's me. You have those features. You can do that. Wow, Shawnte, you look like that. Amazing. It really amazing. This same friend, Tasha, she's a makeup artist. And I remember I went to her. It was the first time I had ever went and got my makeup done. And when she finished, I looked and I was like, that's me. And she was like, that's you. That's not the makeup. That's you. She highlighted different parts of my face and my different features that I had never been able to see before. And so that's what these selfies did. These selfies helped me to see myself. And sometimes I go back and I look at old pictures of myself throughout the years, and it helps me to see me. The next thing, another tool that we begin to use, and y'all, this is all thing, and I know I was probably a worst case scenario. I was probably a worst case scenario, but God had to do a lot of things with me to help me get right here because it was pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty bad. The next thing that we had to hear myself, hear me. I did not like the sound of my voice. If that is, don't know what is. And not only did I not like the sound of my voice, I was not comfortable with speaking. People had been telling me for years, you talk too much, you're too loud. And so I didn't like hearing myself. And I didn't always listen to myself because I didn't like the sound of my voice. More than that, I didn't know what I stood for, what I wanted, what I believed in, because I had been wrapped in so many different identities, so many different identities. And so what we begin to do, what God had me begin to do is video yourself and listen to yourself. Listen and get to know what you sound like. Get to know the type of words that you use. Begin to understand and hear how you speak to yourself and how I speak to you. Repeat back to me, and so many times we've done this. Repeat back to me, Shawnte, what I've said to you. That's one of the reasons why I can sit here and do this, because I repeat back what God has said to me. And we were doing videos so that I can begin to hear myself. The next thing that and going in line with this is was to figure out what it is that I wanted. Be okay. What is it that I wanted? I didn't know. I was so wrapped up in everybody else and in all the things that everybody else wanted. I didn't know what I wanted. Remember, my identity crisis, or the realization of my identity crisis, started while I'm sitting up there trying to figure out that couch. So, what is it that you want? And be okay with wanting. And that's one of the things that we had to go through and begin to do. So, what I created was a I want list. And what God had me do was He had me put down every little thing that I wanted, every little thing that I could think of. And at first, it was so hard to do. It was the most complicated thing because I didn't always know what I liked, what I wanted, what I desired. And so I listed everything on this I want list. And I love my I want list. I mean, when I tell you I got petty. And it's fun. It's really fun. And the beauty is God has given me almost all the things on my I want list. The last thing that I had to learn to do was to trust myself. Well, I had to learn to trust myself. I had to learn to trust myself. I always would ask everybody else, what do you think? 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 What you think it is? Should I do this? What do you think about this? Because I did not trust the decisions that I made based upon the fact that I trusted somebody from a long time ago. And then it seemed as if life just kept reinforcing those bad habits. So I had to begin to tell myself, and I created a journal and I started saying, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Because you know what? Whether you're right or wrong, Shawnte, it's okay. Whether, if it's good or bad, Shawnte, it's okay. But learn to trust you. And the beauty about this was that God really began to show me, Shawnte, as long as you are following me, you don't have to worry about anything else. And that has been essential in helping me learn to trust trust the voice that I hear, trust my own decisions, trust that everything is going to be okay. Figure out it's okay to trust yourself. Sometimes you're gonna make the right decisions, sometimes you're not. It's okay. So I've learned to say, I'm just going with the flow. I'm going with the flow, but I'm trusting God. And all of this, every ounce of this, what this did was this gave me back me. It helped me to reclaim and re-see myself and reclaim my identity. I didn't know who I was, but now I do because God took me on this journey. And the same thing can happen to you. We get so caught up in the roles that we miss. We get so caught up in the things and the words that people use about us, and we take that on and we don't know who we are. What I want you guys to do is use some of these tools because they really are. They're practical tools that can be implemented every day to help you reclaim your identity. Let go of the jokes from the past. Let go of the jokes from the past. Forgive yourself. Figure out who you are. Begin to see you. Begin to hear you by taking pictures and creating videos to yourself. Create the list, who you, the you that God created. Create your I want list. And then begin to trust yourself because you are worthy. You are exactly who God created you to be. You are a magnificent individual. You are a powerful individual. And sometimes we lose that. We don't see it, so we don't operate in our life that way. So over the next couple of weeks, we are going to be helping you reclaim your identity. We're going, like I said earlier, for those of you just joining us, and as we get ready to close out this section of the show and begin to take some questions, you're going to be hearing from other women who lost their identity, and they're going to be telling you how they reclaimed their identity. And another thing I want you guys to do, if you haven't already, join us for the 75-day challenge. We are becoming consistent. We're using some of these tools. We are reclaiming ourselves. So on the screen is how you can join and what it is that we're doing. We're supporting one another. We are becoming, because that's our goal, to see you guys win. And because I know that y'all love these conversations, you can, what I want you to do is I want you to check out Next Level Magazine. Issue 2 is out and it is available. There are more tools and things for you all to help you get out of chaos, reclaim your identity, step into who you are. So go and download that right now. And also join us, catch our podcast. Catch our podcast. These are ways that you can connect with us. Catch our podcast. New episodes released every Wednesday. And so as we get ready to wrap up, I just want to remind you guys, I want to remind you guys that you matter. We see you. We hear you, and we are here to support you. And we are going to have the best time reclaiming our identity over the next few weeks. And in that, as they say, dear people, is the end of that.